Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting live from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void live. It's Tuesday, February the 4th, 2025. Let's see. Am I right? Yes, I'm right. It's Tuesday. I didn't even know what day it was. Welcome back to Lighting the Void. If you're tuning in live on fringe.fm or YouTube, thanks for listening to us live. Who does it live anymore? The only people that are doing live broadcast anymore, by the way, are gamers. That's it. I mean, I'm sure there's some live podcasters and stuff, but you know, we're trying to keep it alive here. You know what I mean? We're trying to keep it alive because it doesn't, you know, live is live. The world could, you know what's cool about doing live shows is aliens could invade like right now. And I'd be like Orson Welles. I'd be the guy that's talking to you while it happens. Usually when I get, like, when I see live stuff, it's what's up, Robo? Thanks for the 15. My brother. Thank you, man. Domek. What's up, man? Usually when you get on YouTube and you see live stuff, it's weather or gaming, right? Most of the time, unless there's something crazy going on in the news. So, again, I appreciate you guys hanging in with us. I got another little bit of a late start, but that's just because I'm feeling a little under the weather still. Whatever this is, I've called a couple of friends from the medical field instead of going to the doctor. It saves money if you just call people that know what they're talking about. And they're saying I have some form of bronchitis, but it should be okay within a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Who knows, man? I'm saying 3 weeks. From what I've been talking to everybody's been saying it's like 3 weeks until you're totally, you know, good. This is a long time, though, man, to be hacking and yakking, you know. But live broadcasting is the best, isn't it? Even if we're just doing stuff, like we're not doing anything, because you never know. And speaking of which, the call-in number tonight is 501-777-5631. That's always a thing, gonna be a thing. And you can call in and interrupt the broadcast anytime you want. If I see the call, I will answer it. If I hear it, I'll answer it, depending on how I have the setup that night. And sometimes I may just call you back. I don't know. Make sure you guys join the Discord if you haven't. And, you know, hang out with us in there. I check it from time to time myself. I even jumped in there yesterday, so I was watching Groundhog Day. I feel like I'm in Groundhog Day. I'm not the only one that feels that way. Like, I think I was talking to Domek, who's in Arizona, by the way. My old stomping grounds. I can't wait to go back to Sedona. We were talking about that, by the way. We might thinking about doing some event or something, maybe. I don't know. In Jerome, something like that, maybe. But I was talking to him about that. And it says sometimes you get this weird feeling like you're stuck. Well, I do. Like I'm stuck in between timelines, if that makes sense. So I've had this feeling a few times in my life where it feels like I'm going somewhere and I can't explain it. It's not necessarily like I'm going somewhere physically on the earth. I don't know. I'm going to try to make sense of this, but yeah. It feels like, yeah, you know, your life is kind of on a set track and a set timeline. And then you achieve whatever you've set out to achieve, right? And then the next thing you know, you feel like you're in this kind of weird in-between state. What is that? The only thing that I can explain it as is like this feeling of, you guys ever watch The Twilight Zone? I know not everybody is as old as I am, but most of the people that listen to this broadcast, I've looked at the demographics, are between the ages of 35 and 60, right? So most of you, I would think, most of you know about the Twilight Zone. And that first episode of the Twilight Zone where they're doing that experiment on the guy, and he's like, Christy Belly is, what is Discord? See? Told you, the age demographics there. So that first episode of Twilight Zone, The government is doing an experiment on a guy from the Air Force. You don't know this when the episode starts because he's walking around, just doing his. It's almost like he's in the middle of a dream. You ever notice, like, you don't know when a dream starts. You just kind of find yourself in a dream, right? Yeah. I didn't want to offend anybody with that age thing, but Christy Belly's like, what is Discord? Discord is a chat room. It's like an advanced chat room thing. You should join it. You should join it. So he goes into this town, and if you guys haven't watched the old Twilight Zone stuff, you're missing out, man, because it's awesome, especially like the first 10 episodes. So he goes into this town, and he just starts realizing like he's the only one there, and he keeps going into these places where it looks like someone's just been there. So he finds like hot food, smoking cigars, all kinds of different things, but he ends up being totally alone. Now, he's not really totally alone. He's kind of in this government experiment. And so towards the end of it, he just starts freaking out. Like he has a freak out session. And so I guess the moral of that episode is that loneliness can get you to this place where you feel like you start going crazy. But I kind of, it's not a lonely feeling at all. I don't feel alone. I mean, even when I'm with myself, I used to, but I don't really feel alone anymore. It's more like a feeling of like, here's the timeline that I was on, and there's like this other timeline that I'm supposed to be on. Okay. And I'm in between those places. And in between those timelines is a very weird and awkward place of disconnectedness. Not from myself, even not from you guys, not from, it's a weird disconnected feeling. Dutchie says, I listen to the Twilight Zone radio show on YouTube all the time. That's pretty rad. I didn't know they had a radio show they played on YouTube. Yeah. Chris Miner says, I understand completely. Yeah, so I used to think it was a guy thing, honestly. No offense, ladies, but I used to think it was a guy thing because I always thought that we as dudes, we have to like be on some kind of purpose. And when you're on the purpose that you're supposed to be on, everything just seems to click. And then when you reach that purpose, you get kind of bored as a guy. You're like, well, I've conquered that thing, so now what? And so you could feel this next thing like coming. But it's almost like the more you try to go out and make something happen that you don't even know what the hell it is, the further away it feels. So you kind of got to sit around and wait for it to happen. Not wait for things to happen, but wait for the shit. I'm trying to think of the inspiration. That's what you're waiting for. And then you'll know it. And then next thing you know, you'll be out of that timeline. So this might be like the second time in my life where I felt like I'm in this kind of weird, like in-between place. Does that make sense? If I couldn't express myself through this broadcast, I would really feel weird, you know? Yeah, I definitely would. So, let's see. We've got some new subscribers to the channel. John Ho, some Johns. John Marcus, Carlos, LMH, Martin, Masaga, Shred, Alaska. That was, wait, that's Twitch. Never mind. And then Toninian Bovie. Yeah, cool. Allie, thanks for grabbing a copy of Magic Temple Fundamentals. That's so cool. Fish and Bum, thanks for subscribing. And Robo1776, man, you've been a big supporter too. Thank you so much. And I want to give a shout out to someone that was sending, because I have to. I feel bad if I don't, guys. Like if you don't acknowledge people, it just feels weird, right? So when I was at the Domex, I hope it comes up here. I'll have to find it, but I got some, I guess, Cash App donations from someone named Matt, a few of them, so thank you. I don't know if you want me to say your last name or not. I'm sorry. I sound sickly as shit. But when it pops up, yeah, I got your donations, dude. So thank you so much. And a couple through the Fringe FM website too. Trey, thank you. So thank you guys. So what I wanted to do tonight, as I kind of wanted to, at some point this week, I do want to pick apart that Joe Rogan episode, but I have a set of texts that we've went through that I feel are like some of the best OBE texts, and oddly enough, they're all kind of older. And the reason why is maybe I haven't read any of the new stuff. I haven't found any of the new books that impress me as much as the older texts do, you know. Joanne says it definitely happens to girls too. Good, yeah. Because I used to think it was a dude thing, right? Because it's all about going out and achieving. But if it's like, well, I achieved this thing, now what else, you know, what do I achieve? You start feeling crazy, man. If you're not careful, if you can't like get meditative and just kind of, you know, explore your curiosities and wait for it to happen, you'll start going crazy. All right, page 18. So this book that I want to get into is called Explorations in Consciousness. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it, but it's by Fredrick Aardema. But I do want to, I'm pulling some clips off of Thomas Campbell's interview with Joe Rogan. And I think the biggest thing that sticks out to me is, and I talked about it last week, is when Joe Rogan asked him, why don't you replicate this? Right? So if you can get out of body, because Thomas Campbell was talking about how he could get out of body, and he did it with a guy named Dennis, and I think Joe McMonagle's wife as well, and they would go places together and do things together. So Joe Rogan asked him, he said, let's get into the astral dojo. Let's go. He asked him, look, can you replicate this? Thomas Campbell said, yes, I can. I can replicate it. And he said, well, if you can replicate it, why don't you do it? Why don't you replicate it? Why don't you show the world that this is a real thing? And Thomas Campbell replied, and I'm, you know, kind of butchering it a little bit, but he said, well, I've usually found that if I replicate these things, no one's going to believe me, or they're going to look down upon me, or something like that. And then he wrapped it up and said, usually the only person that's convinced the reality of the out-of-body experience is the person that's having that out-of-body experience. Everybody else is kind of, I guess you could say, skeptical, right? And then Rogan goes on to tell him, well, that's kind of a cynical point of view. And then I think Thomas Campbell just jumps to a new point. So he gets off that point real quick, right? But that has been bugging the hell out of me ever since I've heard it, because I feel like, in this case, Joe Rogan is right. I just want you guys to think about this, okay? If your sole mission is to help the world, if that's what you're saying, my mission is to come to the world and open people's minds up, or consciously, or whatever. And you can demonstrate that. Right? Didn't Teal, like this, not Teal Swan, but Ingo Swan, they demonstrated remote viewing. Why do we not have any of the out-of-body gurus? I'm not putting Thomas Campbell on blast here. There's several people going around claiming to be OBE gurus and out-of-body experts, and I'm not saying they're not, but if they are, what is keeping the gurus in this field from demonstrating this? Right? Now, I think it's a good question. And it's, if Thomas Campbell's given an answer, I'll look it up. But it's not just this isn't just about Thomas Campbell. all of the out-of-body gurus have something to sell, and I don't care about that. That's not, I mean, I have stuff to sell. I'm not a guru. We all have stuff we sell, right? But no one is willing to say, look, let's just go to this place, let's demonstrate it, and let's do it. You can do it. You can do it. I mean, I'm sure Thomas Campbell's probably has a video on why he doesn't think it's a good idea, but I think it's a good idea. I personally don't claim to be proficient enough at the OBE world to do it. But I promise you this, if I get to a place, which I'm trying to right now, if I get to a place where I can get out of body and go locate things or get out of body with certain people and do it on a frequent basis, whether there's an observer or not, I will try to demonstrate it. And you got to ask yourself this, right? Would you? Like, who cares? There's always going to be skeptics, man. Even if you got out of body and they put you in two different rooms, like you said, away from earshot, and then you came back and reported this stuff, it doesn't matter. Even if there's little intricacies that aren't the same or whatever, there's going to be enough evidence that's going to show, man, these people traveled consciously together. There should be enough evidence to show it. And you can't say that, like the inner journey's your own or whatever. The question that he's asked them specifically is when Dennis and Thomas got out of body together and they saw the same things. That's their journey, not your own journey. They had the journey together. Just like he said he did with Joe McMoneagle's wife. They went out. Now, they may see things a little different, but it was enough, at least for Robert Monroe and the Monroe Institute, to know that they did it together. So to me, there's no excuse. If you can say that to Robert Monroe and the Monroe Institute, and you know it, that, yeah, we went to the same places, we saw the same things. We reported back to Robert Monroe that we did it, you know. Like, you should be able to do it. Right? I would. Even, let's say me and Purple Pencils decided to get out of body. They put us in two different rooms, which would be cool, right? They put us in two different rooms, and the whole experiment was for us to get out of body and have an experience and go to the same place. We can't hear each other. There might be one person that can hear both rooms or whatever. So we leave. We go out and we start talking about. We even start talking to each other, just like Thomas Campbell said he did with Dennis. He said they did it several times. You're either doing that or you're not. So there's no reason to me, no logical reason that you couldn't do the same thing. You don't have to do it live in front of everybody, but do the same thing and record it. Let us hear what you guys are talking about, just like they did, and let us make up our minds for ourselves. I don't care what you say. I don't care what Thomas says. I don't care what anybody says. There's no reason why you can't do that. Not one. You're going to see different stuff anyways. Little bitty intricacies that are different. And now we have people that have done, this needs to happen is what I'm saying. So instead of everybody going out and selling courses on OBE stuff, let's actually try to change the world and do it. Right? I'm not talking about Thomas Campbell's theory. I'm not talking about his own personal journeys. I'm talking specifically about what he said on Rogan, that he took journeys with other people. They saw the same things. They reported the same things. Joe asked him, do it again. He says it's not worth it to him. It's not, based on his experience, it's not going to be worth it. Well, then that puts the OBE stuff, in my opinion, in a place where it doesn't need to be. Look, all I'm saying is all right, let's look at all the different explorations of consciousness. First, there's meditation. We've got plenty of feedback on meditation to know at least its health benefits and at least that it's real. Okay. We've got, what else do we got? So we've got psychedelics. We've gotten plenty of feedback to know what's going on in that realm, enough to know that it's beneficial to us and enough to know that it's real. Okay. We've got remote viewing. Some of the biggest leaders in the world have done remote viewing tests, are willing to do the tests, and have done them in public, recorded it, and set it out for the public. Right? We've got telepathy. We have enough information on the telepathy tapes. We heard some of that stuff ourselves, the recordings. So all of these different categories of consciousness are showing us the truth about them, that there's something to it, right? But when it comes to the OBE world, what we have is a lot of people, a lot of individuals given their experiences, but not any real recorded proof other than the tapes that we've heard from the Monroe Institute. And you guys, hey, when y'all listen to this show, we listen to it quite a bit. Right? There was some sketchy stuff in there, wasn't it? Like there was some weird stuff going on. However, if you took two people like Thomas, this is all I'm saying, like Thomas Campbell's talking about, two people that were proficient at it, and they had enough OBEs together, you could put them away from each other, exactly how they did the experiment. Even if they came back and started talking about just a few things that they saw together, and the conversation that they were having with each other was the same, that would be a big, big revelation in the realms of conscious exploration. To me, it would like complete it. And then we'd know, like, okay, this whole thing is real. I know it's real. I'm not arguing the fact about the out-of-body experience is like, if it's real, if it's not real. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm not arguing the fact that, you know, if it only matters to you and you could care less about the rest of the world, then it doesn't matter. But if you're going to say, man, I really want to open doors and show people or show the world this realm and help people explore their consciousness, then I think it would be important for this to happen. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. Oh man, it's getting hard. It's getting hard to explain this stuff sometimes. Because I get it, man. Most people only care, like, I want to get out of body. Everybody wants to get out of body. And when they do it, yeah, you want to share it with somebody and that's it, right? But the idea is to, you would hope that we want to grow consciousness for everybody too, you know. Think about how much the world would change. The ripple effect, cause and effect. Let's just think about this. If Robert Monroe and they did this stuff, think about the ripple effect of that. Not Robert Monroe, but Thomas Campbell. Let's just say it wasn't Thomas Campbell. Let's say it was this, what's his name? There's another guy on the scene that sung Gaia and stuff. I keep forgetting the damn guy's name. But let's say he did that with someone else. And they did it definitively, where we could see that, man, you know, they actually did go out of body with each other. They did do this together. It'd be a game changer, man. Total game changer. All right, so this book is called Explorations in Consciousness, which is a new approach to the out-of-body experiences by Fredrick Aardema. I don't think I've went into this one, but if I have, you guys can stop me. But I had 5 or 6 of these books that I went through, and the most profound ones that I thought were the most profound. Damn it, I missed a phone call and I can't. Can try to call you back, I guess. I don't know why the hell it's not ringing in my ear. Like if I don't have the browser open, it doesn't ring in my ear. Let's see. Here, I'll call you back. Let's see. And if not, we'll go on We'll fix this. But I'm not trying to be
Yeah.
What's up, brother? Who am I speaking with?
It's Dutchy, man.
What's up, Dutchy?
Are you into that book already?
Nah, it wouldn't matter. I'd still talk to you, brother, if you called in. But no, I'm not into the book yet.
No, I thought I'd just discuss this thing with why people don't get on there and tell what they're doing.
Yeah. All right, let's hear it.
Well, it's always a matter of perspective, no matter you write it down or not. I mean, in the 70s, it was Yuri Guri, or however you say his name was, and he tried to prove all this stuff, and everybody would just cried BS all the time.
I remember that, yeah. Yeah.
And, and before that, I swear that one Bardon book where he wrote that he was a stage magician. And, this part of the thing was that people thought that for a long time that stage magicians were real magicians.
Mm.
And sometimes over time, several times I've thought that that's very true.
Right. Well, here's my thing. I think it would be redundant, honestly, other than, us just talking to each other. Like, we like to talk to each other about our OBE experiences. But in reality,
right,
that doesn't really prove anything. Okay. And it's not going to. But what I'm talking about is when he claimed that him and Dennis went out together and had experiences together, talked about them together, all of that stuff, right? Same thing with Joe McMonagle's wife. If you take two people and they go out of body together and they have experiences together and they're talking about the same things and you can prove that, that would be a pretty profound thing. And that was Joe Rogan's point, Right.
No, I agree with you on that point, Joe. It's just that, you know how it is. If someone says, meditate now, like,
oh yeah, to kind of
even if you're
an
expert, you have that pressure and it's not going to be the same.
That's a good point. That is the only good point I think about that. But
and then you put them on a live broadcast or something, and then something like that happens, and people are all like, "Oh yeah, I told you that was total BS."
There's got to be a way to do it though, man. Like, even if it's not live, like you could do an experiment and record it. Just take somebody that you trust or whatever, or just record it. Eventually, they would get relaxed enough to where they could do it, because from my understanding, Robert Monroe was in a chamber or a room, and these two people were in separate chambers, right? So, yeah, I mean, if you put them on a live broadcast and we were all just watching live, I'm sure that it would be difficult to do. But even then, eventually, they'd probably start to relax. It'd just take longer,
Yeah, but beyond that point, sometimes I think that it goes for energies and everything, because Diane Fortune even talked about that in her books, that they used to do that together. And in lodges, they would astral project together.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you see what I mean? So sometimes I think that it has to do with it's not so much of you cheering each other on, but almost that the energy is the same in the room or what have you. It helps facilitate this type of thing. And that's probably true.
You mean people that are around you that actually have positive thoughts about it, that believe in it? That helps?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Because you know that the negative thing always is, even if someone isn't telling you you can't do it, even if they're just thinking it towards you, that does have effect. And it's this whole, I mean, we're going off tangent here, but that whole part is true. Whether you have people surround you that are positive or negative, that does affect how things happen to you.
Well, then why? Here's the difference, though. Why? I'm thinking about if I could do it. If I know I could do it, if I was as proficient as an OBE traveler, I consider myself a pretty decent one. But if I was as proficient as Thomas Campbell or this, I forget the other guy's name everybody talks about. Like, if I was as proficient as all these OBE guys were, me
Right.
personally, I'm not talking about them, I would want to show everybody, especially if I knew another person that was just as good. And we actually did. I mean, really think about this. We actually did go out and explore realms together. Like, I would want to show people that I could do this. I would want to, because that's going to change the world. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I totally understand what you're saying. I think that a lot of people have in the past, and when you, I think they have in groups, in small groups, just like Monroe or Silva or Jan Fortune or Aleister Crowley.
Oh,
or all
they didn't
these
have
people,
a podcast.
magical
back
people.
Then. Yeah.
Okay. And when you said that it goes, when people distrust when it goes toward they're asking for money, it's like a catch-22 because they're so interested in this stuff that they go off on their own and they're trying to explore farther. So then they ask for money so we can explore farther. So then it becomes like, see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, well, I that's not my point with that. My point is if you're saying you know this much about OBEs, enough to teach people about it and charge money, which is fine. I don't give a damn if you charge money or not. Like, that's cool.
Right.
But if you're saying that you're that proficient, then, and you're saying that you want to change the world consciously, you don't have to. I'm not even talking about worrying about sitting in front of the people that don't believe it. I mean, just the skeptics, just the people that are open to it would be enough to change lots of things, right? I mean,
yes,
writing a book about it,
with that whatsoever.
Yeah, writing a book about it is one thing. It's a great thing. We love books and stuff, but all I'm saying is, as I see Joe's point. Like, if you guys did this together so frequently, can you imagine how everybody's consciousness would change if you could replicate it? If you could, how profound it would be to show it? And Thomas Campbell answered him and said, I don't think it would work for whatever reason. Well, and Joe Rogan told him, you're being cynical.
Right. So I'll put it this way. So if Joe got in there, or not Joe, but if Campbell got in there with another guy, or whoever part of his group, and said, okay, we're going to go here now as Joe's watching. And then they started saying, okay, there's a blue guy. And the other person said there's a blue guy. And the third person said there's a blue guy. Then afterwards, everyone said, oh, that's just rehearsed. That was all scripted.
See, I don't think that. I think there's a way they could do that to where some people, there would always be naysayers, but they could do this in a way where there's no way that they could challenge it.
No. Well, there's no way that you could unless you projected a camera inside somebody's mind. Because, like he said on his explanation, that because Joe wanted to do it with him, and on his explanation said, it takes years for someone to get to that level. And we both know you can't just go from 0 to 10.
Yeah, I mean,
so,
yeah. Yeah.
And so then that's why he said he was saying no to Joe and change the subject, because otherwise it becomes a magician's trick. And
I don't think Joe, I think we need to watch it again, because I'm pretty sure Joe didn't ask or even mention him doing it with him. All he said was,
well, that's where I thought,
that's replicate this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but I'll say on another point, I don't want to keep you on the phone all night, whatever, but I'll say on another point, I have Hermetic books that point me where to go to meet the other people. And they're always, and because in the astral realm, they're always there to learn from them. So, and these are physical people. They're not masters like in, I forget, around the turn of the century. They're not masters like that. These are just regular people. But they created a space, and it's not like Campbell's thing, but it's a hermetic place to go learn. And so they're always there. And so I've gone there. And anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. But there is a way to do it with where you have several people in the same place. But to try to explain that to someone that you see, that's where it becomes the woo woo thing, because there's no way to prove that you ever did that.
Uh, I
There's
I think when it comes to the OBE, Robert Monroe set these experiments up specifically to prove that people could do it, and did so.
right.
The problem
Right.
is
Well,
that he didn't record them. That was the whole
Well, he
discussion.
did though.
He didn't
Well, he
record.
did.
He might have recorded them, but they don't have the recordings. I'm wondering if you actually listened to the part in the Rogan thing that I'm talking about. What he asked Thomas Campbell.
I think so, but I think
what
so.
Thomas
but
Campbell
I
told
don't-
him and what Joe said afterwards. Do you understand what I'm talking about? This
Maybe
is probably
I'll
why
have to listen to it again. But
this is probably
yeah.
why it's important to have a clip, because opinions don't really mean shit until you hear the clip, and I don't have the clip, you know.
Right. No, I understand. Yeah. I mean, it's just my opinion on the whole shared experience thing. It becomes very hard.
Well,
and then trying to prove that to someone.
Yeah, well, I mean,
and
this show specifically is to explore and expand consciousness, and to reach out to people that are curious about it, and to reach out to people that are skeptical about it. Because if otherwise, me personally, if I just wanted to validate my own experiences, I would probably not even do this show.
Well, no, that's not what I think you're doing at all, Joe. You're helping a lot of people.
Right.
But it's all individual thing. That's why I said it's inner journey, because, some people are more apt to get out a body, and some people aren't, and some people are more apt to meditate, and some people aren't.
Sure.
And it takes time. So any little help that you can give, and you have given a lot to everyone, all the listeners, everyone and that pushes everyone along the way. And hopefully they can get to the same point that you are. I mean, but it all helps. And people wouldn't be listening to you if they weren't interested in the subject and wanted to move along the way.
Yeah. Well, that's the reason why I listen to other stuff too. I think we're kind of missing the point of what I initially said, though, right? Like what I initially said was that I agreed with Rogan. Like I couldn't even try to prove my individual explorations. That would be one of the most redundant things on the planet. Okay. Right. However, if I'm claiming that I can get out of body with other people, and we're in separate rooms, and saying that we're seeing the same things, and then when Rogan asks, do you have recordings of this? Well, yeah, but they don't know where they are. See, there's no proof of that, because that actually is a thing that you could prove, that conscious exploration outside the body is real when you have another person there going to the same place that you are. Regardless of what anybody says, that would be great proof that there's something about it other than one person's individual. Well, it happened. Sorry if you don't believe me, or if you don't.
Well, yeah, and it's what Monroe did the whole time, right? When he would get a group of people together, and then they would hide something in the room. You listen recordings. They would hide something in the room, and then all the people were supposed to go look in the box to what it was.
Yeah, I think. Right? Yeah, I think they did
some
stuff
of them,
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, some of them would make it, some of them wouldn't, and they were all supposed to report independently what was in the box, and they were testing that whole thing. But beyond that, because to have a camera there, well, that's not going to capture anything. So it's all just what people say. And then, I agree that if they could actually do it in a way that would, it could never be validated, because what are you going to say? But in a way that people would believe. See, that's the problem. What would people believe?
It doesn't
Even
matter.
If you said, they're in two separate rooms. Who do you see? The blue being, and they both see the blue being. And people would say, it's pure BS. That's just my
There's
point.
always
It's
going to be
just-
those people. God could come
I
down
know,
on the earth in
that's the
physical
problem.
form, and there's always going to be those people. I'm not talking about those people.
Yeah, but I think that what you're saying is what you're doing right now. You're talking to people, and people believe what you're saying, and we're here listening to you, and I think you have way more effect. Maybe not on it. Rogan does. Maybe one day he will. Hey, I'm positive, but you don't have a whole bunch of naysayers in your crowd or just crying BS all the time, BS all the time, BS all the time. I mean, we're here with you.
Yeah, no,
And
I get that.
Cheering you on when you have experience and cheering each other on when they have experience and trying to help each other.
Right, but my point here, Dutchie, is that I don't care about any of that, like I do in other senses of the word. But what I'm talking about specifically in that clip, and here's what I'm going to do is find that clip and play it so people understand what I'm talking about, because it has nothing to do with who's helping who and if Rogan's ever going to believe in OBE stuff or none of that. All Rogan said is repeated back what Thomas Campbell said that he could do with other people and said, can you replicate it? And he said, well, yeah. He said, don't you think if you could replicate it, that by doing this, it would open people's minds and show them more that there's a reality to this? He said, no, I don't think so, because people look on him negatively or whatever. Immediately, Thomas Campbell took a cynical point of view to Joe's question. Right?
Yeah.
Thomas Campbell isn't perfect.
No,
I promise you.
No one is.
So he took a cynical point of view because Thomas Campbell has an agenda to get out what he's been working on, not what he did back in the 60s or 70s. And in his mind, he's only got a limited time on Joe Rogan's show to talk about what he wants to talk about, because he may never get to go back on there again. So he's trying to tell Joe in that conversation, I don't think it's worth my time. I don't think it'll make a difference. Joe Rogan says, I think it'll do. My point is only this and nothing else, is that I agree with Joe. It would change some people's lives. Not Joe's lives. We're not talking about Joe's life. We're not talking about mine.
Agree.
We're just talking about other people that want to know. That's it.
I agree with your point there. I agree with your point there. I just, Yeah,
exactly. There's a bigger picture.
It really is. Yeah.
And
I agree.
And, Thomas's big thing is, and he pushed it to the side and was like, I got bigger stuff I'm working on, like AI and consciousness and all this other stuff. And that's cool. But the only reason why Joe said that to him is because he stated specifically, I came here to this earth to help people consciously, to open up their minds to this. Right.
Right.
And we all believe
because
that.
He had said, like you said, because he had said he had done this with other people, so that's why Joe said, "Can we do it?"
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I mean, because if I'm Joe Rogan and he goes into a room, right? Like if I'm Joe Rogan, he goes into a room and he's got one guy just like Robert Monroe did, and then you send two people into two separate rooms. They're not even in earshot of each other. And they start talking about they're seeing the same things, and even if it's not exactly accurate, but it's accurate enough to where you'd go, how the hell is this happening? That's all it takes.
Right.
To get people's heads spinning.
And I wish that Rogan would set up something like that. Go outside of his studio and set up an experiment like that. Why not? He's so interested in everything. I wish he would do something like that.
That's a good point. Yeah, definitely. I think Rogan should do it.
Yeah, because he couldn't, asking him to do it and stuff. Well, you're putting somebody on the spot, but, even him, I'm defending him, but I don't know him whatsoever. But you know what I mean.
Sure, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So if, he would set up some sort of experiment like that, that would be a much better thing. And that would be awesome.
Well, that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that the OBE stuff gets bigger and bigger to where See, when things become specialized, then they get that's great, but there's a problem when things are like we have our own little special OBE group. See, that's a problem. Number one, because it exists and it's real, and we need to help everybody understand this. That means lots of people. And number two, when you have a little niche group like that into something that fantastic, those people get taken advantage of, especially the people that have had real experiences or really want to have those experiences. Because if we don't find out the ultimate truth about it, it's easy to just say that you've done this or do these things. And I'm not talking about just charging people money for it, but you could actually keep them segregated from the rest of society. Whereas if an experiment happened on a platform big enough, it no longer becomes a little specialty thing, right? Yeah. Like we should want everyone else's consciousness to be open, not the other way around. Right. You know?
Right. I mean, you're distinguishing between like cult and between. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because it's not that I care if people think I'm in a cult or not. I don't. But I don't
the
think
difference between a small group of people and then you start, demanding things from people to come in. Yeah. Well, that's basically a cult.
Yeah, and
you're not openly sharing things, but the other side is, openly sharing things isn't always the truth either. Whatever. But,
because one of the first things that happened when I had my first OBE Dutchie, the big one, the life changing one, is I wanted everybody to know, and I knew for a fact that people were going to think that I was crazy, or they were going to think that I was whatever. But when when it really happens to you, something that profound. And I don't know about everybody else, but they don't really want to run and hide it from people unless it's a negative thing. This wasn't a negative thing to me. This was fantastic, life-changing.
Right.
Right.
Well, that's what with mine, the first time I got out, I explained that on the show already. And I've told a lot of people about that. And I would say probably 75%, 80% think that's total bullshit.
Yeah. Well,
they just, I'm just known as the person that said I had out of body experience.
You're the crazy guy, right?
Yeah, basically that's what it is. And so, there's a couple people, I would say, honestly, all the people, I know quite a few people, and maybe like 2 or 3 were genuinely interested in it. And we talked about it. And not to be what those are the people that go to psychics regularly. They're the people that they're just more open to things, where the rest of the people are like, oh, so you believe in UFOs. They just, I don't know. But
that's kind of where Thomas Campbell was coming from. He's like, well, people might take a negative viewpoint of me or whatever, but
right. But it doesn't matter.
Who gives a shit?
I never gave a shit either. I would just I have not to go on a whole bunch of other things, but whatever, talking about things. And then I'd say, well, I had this, and people would be like, they just look at me like, it's, I saw a ghost. Just look at you. There's not even a question. It's just like the 2-second pause. On to the next topic. And then, so it's very hard to convince people of anything, especially when it comes to, this is what, diverge even anymore. I don't want to take up your whole show, Joel.
You're not. We're going to take a break anyways here in a second, but look, you can't convince people if they don't want to be convinced. But I can tell you for sure that there are people in this group, in this new agey, whatever group you want to call it, of people. There's some people that don't want it to be mainstream. They like to be special and all this other stuff for some of the same reasons that teenagers, when they get mad, they start wearing goth clothes. You understand what I'm saying? Like they don't want it's not even a thing where they're thinking about other people. and how it could change their lives. They're just thinking that they're special. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And sometimes I think that with Monroe's stuff, that since he did record everything, I can't believe that there's no video of anything.
That's exactly what I was saying. Like, how many, and when Joe Rogan asked him that, he said, is there recordings of you going out of body with this other person? Right. I went and looked. I can't find any recordings of any two people going out and seeing the same things. Right. Like, why is that not there?
Well, and it's the same. I don't think I've ever seen any recordings of the when they did the remote viewing stuff. I've just seen, well, maybe some like cursory things, but not like a whole long video of that. And that was for the government. You think they'd be recording all of that?
Yeah, I don't know about the remote viewing thing, but it is kind of interesting.
Well, no, when put off, and those guys had that with Ingo Swann, that had to be. I mean, they're working for the government. That had to all be recorded so that they were trying to prove something to the government. You think that all would be on video somewhere, but I don't think I've ever seen any of that. Like, I've seen some where they had inside the studio, but it wasn't of them remote viewing. It was just like, oh, here's Ingo and here's Hal Putoff and here's, but it wasn't. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's sort of a conspiracy in some way that you don't see any of that.
Mm-hmm. Purple Pencil says, I'm training my kids. That's good, man. Train your kids.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
But we gotta, I appreciate your call, Dutchie. We gotta do the break thing. Yep. No, you're all right, bro. All right. Thanks for your call.
All right. Yeah, you have a good night, Joe.
You too, bro. Right. I'd rather talk to phone callers than talk to myself. Trust me on that one. All night long. You guys, but if I was a smarter person, I would have pulled the clip. It's just, it's been bugging me a little bit. So if anybody, here's what I want. Let's just do this as a project together, all of us. Can anybody find any Monroe recordings where two people went out and saw the same things together? I feel like we've listened to one of those. Maybe not with Thomas Campbell, but maybe it was two other people. Understanding these factors, number one, that the two people aren't in the same room, that the experiment was purposely to separate two people and to see if they would go out of body and see the same things together. That's very interesting to me, and I feel like that the Monroe Institute probably did that several times. I haven't or don't remember any recordings like that. So if Sudi's saying their paper sessions have been recorded, well, that kind of sucks. I'd rather hear the audio. But the paper ones are good too. But if you find any audio ones, please drop them in the Discord or email or whatever. We got to pay for the music licensing. By the way, that's one good reason why you want to listen to the live broadcast, because eventually I have to cut out all of these songs out of the live broadcast. So if you like listening to music along with the broadcast, maybe you should check out the live show. Make sure you catch it here Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Be right back.
This is Valorcus45, fan of the Fridge FM, challenging everyone to open their mind's eye. Listen to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop to gain precision for your third eye vision.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Olivia from Washington. Laid off and trying to keep our little kids from realizing that mommy and daddy haven't eaten in a while.
Roger from California. I'm grateful we could afford our son's surgery. I'm nervous that now we can't really afford food.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Donna from Louisiana. The storm just hit, and we went from donating to the food bank to needing it.
Keisha from South Carolina. I've been skipping meals so my 2 kids can eat, but filling up on water doesn't really work.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Is this tree good for climbing? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Have you ever wondered, what do the stars say for me? Or, will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our 2 signs compatible? Each month, at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Root. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energy.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. We got to get into this tech series here that I'm talking about. I got a little cool announcement I want to make here too. So we finally got a decent heater in the shack, even though it's like 80 degrees now. We're having like an early spring here, but I've tried butane, propane, electricity, everything. It's cost me a fortune to heat this shack up, but finally I got a little diesel heater made by Vibor, a 5-liter tank diesel heater that works so well, I've decided to affiliate with it. So if you go to fringe.fm/heater, you can get one yourself, and that'll help support the show too. I think they give us like 5 or 10% of each heater that we sell. So the thing is freaking awesome. It only takes 5 liters of diesel, and it barely sips the diesel, and it's so freaking warm in here. It's crazy. And I discovered this thing when I went to Domex because he had one. And it's a very oddly shaped heater. I'll have to do a video and make one, But if you're off-grid, if you are kind of like me and you're living the rugged lifestyle, or if you just want to find a different way to heat your little house or whatever, this thing is perfect. Because I went from spending anywhere from 100, I'd say 150 for electricity, 300 for propane, all the way down to $40 freaking dollars a month just using diesel to heat up my place here. That's pretty freaking awesome. Sudi says, please pair up with an air conditioner company next. I don't know if they make anything as cool as this thing as far as like ACs go, but yeah, this thing is pretty rad. You get it's less than $100. It's like $90 if you go to the link, right? And you just hook up the exhaust, the intake, put some diesel in it, prime that son-of-a-bitch. Good to go. And it doesn't use hardly any power. 12 volts. It hooks up to a 12 volt. So you can hook it up to a solar panel. The more I think about it, you can go buy your little 30-watt solar panel or whatever and just hook it up outside, and you got heat, man. $40 a month, you'll be as hot and as warm as you need to be. The Dark Knight says, does it vent out a window or something? Yeah, it has an exhaust. I had to drill a hole in the wall it has a little exhaust pipe that goes out. So I just got a 2-inch hole saw and drilled a hole in the wall and got some 3M thermal tape, some 600-degree tape, kind of covered the hole up, put the exhaust through it. I'll have to send you guys a picture of it, though, but it's pretty cool. Dutchie just tipped $50. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it, man. But I swear on everything. If you have a heating issue, if you live north of the Mason-Dixon line, if you're off-grid, if you're camping, even if you live in I would say a small house. Hell, even if you live in a big house, if you got a couple of these things, it's going to save you a ton on electricity. Matter of fact, I think a lot of the Chinese use these things because of the efficiency. I don't know. That's the rumor. But so far, this thing is it's blown me away because every winter, if I'm here in the shack, I really worry about that. I'm like, Jesus, man, I'm going to have to freaking get $300 in extra donations a month or something to get this place heated. And man, Domec came along and was like, dude, check this heater out. And I got one myself, and I had to talk about it. It might save somebody's winters. So this is probably one of the last texts that I'm going to get into as far as what I would call, size. Sorry. So it's a 5 kilowatt. That probably converts to, 15,000 BTUs, but they make an 8 kilowatt. It doesn't matter if you get the 5 kilowatt or 8 kilowatt. It doesn't matter. It'll heat up. It heats up way more than is measured. So, but as far as like how much room it takes, it's the size of a backpack. It's pretty small. I'll do a short video on it and put it on YouTube. Thanks for the 50, Dutchie, man. Appreciate it, brother. Really, really do appreciate that. So Fredrick Aardema. Am I saying that right? Aardema. Explorations in Consciousness. I got into this one a little bit, and once I get far enough into something, I think it's going to be cool with you guys, I decide to share it. So he talks about setting the stage here. He said, more than 2 decades ago, I was first introduced to the topic of out-of-body experiences by Robert Monroe through his first book, Journeys Out of the Body. And in that book, Monroe described how he one day, out of the blue, began to experience strange vibrations coursing through his body while lying down and preparing for sleep. Yeah, I'm starting to think about that interview again. I've got lots of things I want to talk about with that. Initially, these sensations provoked a great deal of fear, especially when Monroe discovered that the vibrations allowed him to leave his body. Over time, however, his fear subsided, and he set out to actively explore the out-of-body state. He moved through walls, flew through the air, talked to the dead, and visited all kinds of exotic locations. At 17 years old, I believed that anything was possible, and with much naivete and enthusiasm, I made it my first priority to experience the same thing. I carefully read the method Monroe prescribed for leaving the body, which required approaching the borderline of sleep while simultaneously trying to keep one's mind awake. For several weeks, every night before bedtime, I attempted to leave my body. I was not successful at first. I would always fall asleep prematurely. It was not easy to remain awake while lying in bed, especially when trying to relax my mind at the same time. I decided that more drastic measures were needed, and what I lacked in skill, I would make up for with sheer effort and determination. See, this guy thinks exactly the way I thought when I first started going at. I thought the same thing. I'm like, I suck at relaxing. I suck at all this stuff. But damn it, I'm not going to stop until I do it. So he says, I vowed that in my next attempt, I would not give up, no matter how long it took. And speaking of which, I started the show and I got back from the store and kept my coat on. Now I'm freaking sweating. And I got this heater on low, man. Like all the way down to low. And it's just barely sipping diesel. Determination, man. That's it. Sheer will, right? So I vowed that in my next attempt, I would not give up no matter how long it took. And the same night, I spent what seemed like ages twisting and turning in my bed, trying every possible method I could come up with. I even quite literally tried to will myself out of my body. Of course, this method failed as well. It was exhausting. And then 5 or 6 hours later, unable to keep sleep at bay, I slipped into unconsciousness. I would fall straight asleep too every time, man. A few times I didn't, because I'll tell you why. Monroe's first, his first audios that you listen to aren't long enough. Not for me. Like, I would just start to get relaxed, and then he would start waking you up. He would play that weird pitch sound to wake you up, and I'm like, damn. Just as I was starting to relax, he wakes you up. But see, he does that on purpose. You'll learn later. But so when I myself personally was getting into magic and the OBE stuff, that's when I really, truly started to learn how to relax, which I had thought that I could before with all of the anti-anxiety courses I've taken and stuff. Like, I could relax, you know. Not until I did this did I know that I wasn't really relaxed. So only a couple minutes later, I awoke. I heard sounds of bells, the most delicate tones I had ever heard. Each vibrated at a unique frequency, combining into a beautiful arrangement. They were exquisite. A broad smile appeared on my face. I had finally made some progress. That's pretty cool. He heard bells. I guess vibration's different for everybody, right? Barely able to contain my excitement as deep and vibrant colors flashed before my eyes with each tone, I focused on the sounds, and they began to speed up, slowly at first, but quickly reaching a peak. I braced myself, and suddenly my body began to vibrate violently. A strong current of energy coursed through me, and it felt like what I imagined being electrocuted feels like, but without the pain. I felt excited, afraid, and elated all at once. But what was I supposed to do next? I remembered the instructions provided by Monroe. They involved getting the vibrations to form a circle around my body. Then I needed to move the circle of energy upward along the axis of my body, and this would somehow allow me to leave my body. It seemed like a scary prospect, but I couldn't take the vibrations much longer. They were beginning to feel more and more like a real electric current, and every molecule in my body was shaking. I requested the vibrations to form a circle around my legs. To my surprise, they responded almost instantly. Settling into a circle around my body just above the knees, I had not expected it to be that easy. They were still the same heavy pulsations, but were much easier to bear in a more localized area. Man, everybody always seems to have cooler experiences than me. Mine wasn't like all colorful and I could see the vibrations in a circle or anything like that. I wish it would have been. looked down at my body, seeing through closed eyelids. It was an incredible sight. Wrapped around my legs was a brilliant golden circle of light with multicolored sparks flying off in all directions. I had never seen anything like it. It was out of this world. So far, the vibrations had been like a steady, low-frequency thumping. That's what mine felt like, though. That's a pretty good explanation. But I knew that in order to be able to leave my body, they needed to pulse much faster, and I asked for the vibrations to increase in frequency. See, I don't remember Monroe saying anything like that. Of course, every time I go back and listen to the book, Journeys Out of the Body, I always come across something that I didn't remember. And I swear on everything, I've listened to the book like 100 times at this point. And there's always something new I learn each time I listen to the book. So once again, the vibrations responded immediately. Their frequency increased until it became difficult to tell one beat from another. The shift made the sensations a lot smoother and more comfortable. They were as strong as before, but all the roughness had now disappeared. I asked the ring of vibrating light to move upward, and it responded. And the ring began to move along the axis of my body, its pace steady and unwavering. I got that sense that I would not be able to stop it, even if I were to try. I felt some trepidation as the ring of energy approached my loins. My loins? Who says that? It's approaching my loins, the vibration. But it passed uneventfully. The energy flowed past my belly and chest and then moved further upward. I assumed it would continue all the way to my head, but then, suddenly, it stopped at my neck, right near the supraesternal notch. I felt pressure there as if it was trying to find an entry point. Loins. I became anxious. I had not expected the energy to actually get inside of me. There was no way all that energy would fit through that tiny hole in my neck. But I had no say in the matter. The pressure continued until I felt the energy worming its way inside like a snake. This has got to be one of the weirdest vibratory experiences I've ever heard. So I felt some tension as it did so, but nothing cracked. There was no pain. Then something happened I was completely unprepared for. My head roared, a deafening noise as if the entire Niagara Falls had descended into my brain. The energy was all inside of me now. The sheer power of it was enormous. I was on the edge of panic, and it was all too much. Then abrupt silence. It sounds more like a romance novel between this guy and the OBE energy, doesn't it? I felt good, very good. A comfortable tingling sensation had spread across my body like the feeling of 1,000 soft, warm raindrops falling on my skin. It was blissful, and my mind felt light, a little too light. The sky had opened in front of me as if I were looking into deep space. Not outer space, but something entirely different. Far in the distance were wispy clouds of a purple hue. Dude, I want to see this. Like, who doesn't want to have this experience when they have an out-of-body experience? Like, I didn't see anything like that. I began to hear whispering sounds, thousands of voices. It was an eerie, non-human, not of this world voice. I felt my mind extending there, almost like being there. I became afraid again and quickly focused back on my body, and everything seemed normal. The tingling had disappeared. The only thing Fabio appears, right, with his long hair out of the purple lights, right? Yeah. The only thing out of the ordinary was my leg. It was touching the wall beside my bed, and then it hit me. My leg was floating outside of my body. But I was not ready yet. I did not want to leave my body. And then moments later, I felt my regular leg again on the bed as it should be. I immediately jumped out of bed. I couldn't believe the magnitude of what just happened. I had read about the vibrations and about some sort of electric current proceeding in OBE, but I had never imagined anything like what I just experienced. This was the real thing. First off, like, so he hasn't actually come out of his body yet. Just his leg came out. You guys remember when I did that event with Grimerica and I had a dude come up to me and he's like, oh, I scratched my head because his arm came out? Like, that's enough to, just a part of your body coming out, that's enough to really freak people out. Secondly, I got to say this, and I could be wrong, and I'm probably wrong. I tend to make prejudgments a lot of times, you know, but that's all right. One thing I've learned, and not just this realm of the things that we talk about, but in all of life, is that when people tell stories, sometimes they tend to add things that didn't happen to make the story seem more interesting. And then on top of that, you're writing a book. Now, I'm not saying that's what this guy's doing, but I've heard it all. Sasquatch stories, UFO stuff, just people telling stories about their everyday life. And what the human psyche likes to do is add little white lies onto the stories sometimes. I don't know why. To make the story seem more entertaining and fun. And most of us know that the other person is doing this when they're telling their story, and we never say anything. We just do the for real damn thing, you know? Like, we'll hear the story, we'll know that they're kind of adding bullshit to it, and we'll do the for real dams, you know? Like, oh, for real? Damn. You know what I mean? I'm getting that vibe in this case here where I've all these lights opened up and all. I could be wrong though. I mean, everybody has different experiences too. So some people are clairaudient or clairvoyant, right? Like they can see things and colors, and I can't see any of that stuff. I've never been able to see any of that stuff. Purple Pencil says, yeah, you can tell the bonus pack. Yeah, exactly. That's a good word for it. The bonus pack they add to the actual story. And you know, it'd be crazy if people actually realize that. Why? Just tell the truth of what happened. Because when you add the bonus pack, like if somebody calls you out, then no one's going to believe the actual story, you know? But whatever, you know. Maybe this really did happen. And if this really did happen, I'm jealous because I didn't get any bells, any rainbows, none of that stuff. But the vibrations did feel like what he's talking about. So he goes on to say this. Yeah, not invalidating your experience, but I'm not privately judging it. I'm publicly judging it. But I see what you're saying privately, like when you having a conversation with somebody, yeah. Did I use the HemiSync tapes? Yeah. I sure did. Rarely has an OBE felt as vibrant as it did that first time. I never fully left my body, but that was inconsequential. For many years to come, this experience had me in its grasp. I sought to recapture the sense of freedom, bliss, and delicacy of that journey into the unknown. Well, you got my attention. That's a great start to a book, right? The sheer sense of euphoria was beyond my wildest imaginings. In the years that followed, my OBE quest was similar to those described by others. In the beginning, I was only partially able to leave the body. Often I would get stuck with a phantom arm or leg sticking out of my physical body, while the rest of me wasn't able to complete the exit. However, as time went by, separating from my body became easier. Rolling out of the physical body was a favorite method for a long time, and eventually I no longer even needed an exit procedure. I would fly up and away as soon as the vibrations allowed. Other times I simply lifted myself out of bed as if I were getting up in the morning. That's the best way to do it, if you ask me. Just sit up. Don't think about it. Just sit up. My experience of the vibrations also changed. Right from the start, they pulsated at a much higher frequency. I certainly did not mind that. It was a lot more comfortable than the extremely heavy and slow vibrations I'd experienced the first time. Also, the direct manipulation of these sensations was no longer necessary to achieve separation. I only needed to mentally relax into them, and they would automatically intensify until separation was possible. That's where I want to be. You guys remember when I told you that I interviewed Thomas Campbell the second time? The second time I interviewed him, like I said, hey, Thomas, we're going to take a break, right? And then during the break, he just leaned back in his chair and shut his eyes. And for a minute, I was like, oh, are you all right? Like, are you sick? And he's like, what? And I'm like, are you okay? And he's like, no, I'm just going out of body. So he literally just leans back, shuts his eyes, and he says he's gone. He can just do it like that. I want to be able to do that. I have to go through the motions, you know. Like many others who explore OBEs, I initially found myself experimenting in the immediate environment of my bedroom. Yes, good. However, moving through the walls and examining the specific attributes of the non-physical body can only hold one's interest for so long. I don't know about that, but... What's up, Barney? Is that you, Barney, with a guitar? I think. What's up, brother? I'm just making a guess. I see B with a guitar, so... He got bored with it. I soon found myself venturing further out, and some of these experiences had a physical flavor to them, while others seemed to take place elsewhere. I never had any problems with returning to my body. Staying out of my body was the more difficult task. Often I would suddenly find myself back in bed during an OBE. The slightest thought about my physical body would cause this to happen. I was able to remedy the problem somewhat by keeping myself ultra focused on the environment, but it was far from ideal. And over time, however, thoughts about my physical body seemed to have less of an effect. You know what the weirdest thing that happened to me when I was getting out of body was? First it was the inability to see. Like that happened a couple times where stuff would get blurry or just completely dark. But I think I remedied that. I'm pretty sure I did. But the strangest, like the weirdest thing that would happen to me was that my legs would rise. So I got to where I could lay on my stomach and get out of body, which was much more comfortable because I got a pretty big belly. So it's nice and soft, you know, so I could lay on it. It's more comfortable. So I'd lay on my stomach and I'd feel my feet rise up, but my head would be stuck like an anchor. You know, it's so weird. Not only that, like my feet would rise up in the air. I could feel my feet rising, my waist, my chest, even right like when it would get to my neck, and my head would be like an anchor, and it would almost feel like my feet were like trying to pull my head, but my head was way too heavy as I was rising. And then pressure would build in my ears. Like, you know how your ears get when you go deep underwater? Like if you go too deep, too fast, you'll build up pressure in your ears, right? It's the same thing that would happen. So I'd go through the OBE stuff, get to the vibratory state, and be totally relaxed. I could do that pretty easy almost every time. Then I'd start to separate, and then my feet would rise up, and then they would just start like a balloon ready to go off into the air, but my head was like a rock that was keeping it there. And then my ears would feel pressurized, and I couldn't move. I couldn't get out. So I'd wake myself back up, and I'd have to pop my ears. It was fucking crazy. I would literally, you know, you do the stuff when you get off airplanes, right? Like I would, you know, do that stuff with the nose, I'm just doing it while I'm thinking about it. Try to pop my ears and then go back, lay down, and do it again. I don't know why that started happening, but it did. Your legs in the air, experience sometimes the underwater. Where is Tom these days? I think he's, I don't know. I need to get back on his channel and see what he's doing. Hopefully Joe will have him back on. I'm hoping. I'd like Joe to convince him to do some stuff, you know. All right, so this guy's having some of the same issues, but traveling for long distances in the out-of-body state was also quite difficult, I discovered. It was for me, too. I tried it a few times and just said the hell with it. This problem became especially acute while I was still living in the Netherlands, physically separated from my girlfriend who was in Canada. Standing in front of the Atlantic and having to cross it by flight is a pretty overwhelming prospect. So my attempts to travel such long distances often failed. Well, why are you in a long distance relationship? And if you can get out of body, then maybe it's the fact that you wanted to see your girlfriend so bad that kept you from doing it. Who knows? But I was either pulled back into my body prematurely, or I would completely forget about my initial purpose on my way there by getting distracted by something else. I had to find a simpler and more straightforward mode of travel. And guess what he calls it? Y'all ready for this? The void. The void seemed like a candidate. Good for that cause, he says. In the out-of-body state, I would frequently find myself floating in an empty black space with nothing around me. It was not unpleasant, except that very little ever seemed to happen there. It was like floating in a space of nothingness. But then something occurred to me. If distance is an illusion in the out-of-body state, and it certainly appeared that way in the void, then why not use it to travel from one location to another? I would simply fly through it for a while, keep my destination in mind, and then arbitrarily touch ground somewhere. All right, I'm going to blow you guys' mind here, right? So, this void place that he's talking about is 100% real. Once you come to the realization that time and space only exist in the physical reality of I guess what Thomas Campbell calls the data stream of our physical existence here. Once you're in the OBE state, you've crossed over into a different realm or a different data stream. So if you want to fly from one distance to another, you can. You definitely can. Because the locale one or whatever, it's like it is this place. It's just more of like an ethereal place like this. Or you can go into the void. Now, this is something I was going to wait to talk about for a long time, but I kind of discovered it myself too in magic and OBE stuff. But you can go into the void and kind of skip. It's like a virtual wormhole, so to speak, if you want to. If you want. So don't think about it like that. Don't think about it like I think I'm going to talk about this later because this is not going to be accepted by some of you guys, and that's okay. But yeah, you can go anywhere you want. You can practically teleport if you want to. But you can also go, imagine we lived in like a real matrix, not the prison matrix where the god Yaldabaoth is imprisoning you with his magic imprisoning whip. That's not what I mean. But, like imagine you lived in a program. Now, what your understanding and my understanding of a program is a computer program. So when you hear that word program, that's what you're going to think. But I don't mean it like that. I mean it like something that you've never experienced before. A program that's mixed with the digital and the biological. And you can go in and out of video game characters, so to speak. Now, the void would be like my void. I don't know about this dude's void. We're going to read about it. But the void I'm talking about would be like the construct in the Matrix. Like a place that's really a nothingness where you can go into different programs. A place in between. It's like the in-between. It's the void. So if I wanted to go from here to, I don't know, let's just say Australia. Now that's a long-ass plane ride, right? And if I did it OBE and I did it in locale 1 where I'm telling my mind I'm just going to fly in the sky above all the way to Australia, I could probably do that. It would be really difficult, though, to stay focused and go all the way to Australia. But I can go into this void like place and just kind of tell myself I want to be somewhere. Think of a place, person, or thing, and then be there. You know, I started doing that before I started backsliding, which I don't want to get too deep into my story, but I got so far into this OBE thing that I could teleport kind of to places, but not too far away. There's something about some like space or I don't know, China or something like that just my mind wasn't allowing me to do those things. Little Rock though, you know, maybe the west side of Florida, maybe Mobile, maybe Pensacola, that area, I could get there. But there were still blocks in my mind that kept me from going too far. I don't know what it is, and I'm gonna freaking experience it and do it again, figure it out. But can we do a show where you try to get us out as a group? Maybe I'll do that in like a private. I don't know if I want to do like a live show where just anybody can jump in and screw with it, but maybe I'll do it and then send like a private link. I got to be honest with you. I'm better at helping people have their first experiences if I'm actually there physically. Which, by the way, is another thing that we're trying to do. Like, we're trying to do some events this year. So if you know anybody that runs events or that's good at running events or making events happen, hit us up. And I'm not just talking about me. I'm talking about me, Mary, and a couple other people. We want to do an event where you guys can actually physically come hang out with us. So we're working on that, trying to. So let's talk about what this guy's void is. He says, so with the oh shoot, he's always got it. You're always manipulating, aren't you? Let's see. With this method, I had better success in reaching my girlfriend. So it certainly was a lot, and I mean that in a good way, not a bad way, Sudie. It certainly was a lot cheaper than taking an airplane. Mind you, the method was far from foolproof. More often than not, I would end up in what appeared to be a foreign city, but not always close to the house where my girlfriend lived. It's not that easy finding your way in the out-of-body state, even if you're relatively close to your destination. Yet, despite all these difficulties, I was able to reach my girlfriend on several occasions. Well, that's cool that he had a girlfriend that was actually into this stuff, too, so they could, do that together. Tried dating women that's like, hey, you know anything about OBEs? And they're like, what? And they start thinking you're fucking crazy or something. So, apart from the traveling issues, what I also came to realize during these early experiences was that the out-of-body experience is not at all as straightforward as it is often proposed. And usually the environment I encountered was quite different from the real environment that I knew to be there. Proof of the reality of the out-of-body experience was difficult to come by, and even if there was some sort of validation, it was usually different from what I expected. For example, during one projection, I found my girlfriend's house filled with vampires. I bet you I know why that happened. This was odd, since vampires had never before figured in my out-of-body experiences, nor were they particularly in vogue at the time. Needless to say, I did not stick around for a long period during that particular visit, but the next day, I asked my girlfriend what she had been doing at the time, and she told me she had been watching a horror movie. I knew it. I didn't even have to read it. She wasn't watching a horror flick. She was watching Twilight. She was probably fantasizing about vampires. So naturally, the egregore filled her house. All right. Assuming that this was more than just coincidence, I had apparently perceived her state of mind rather than the actual environment. And it was one of the first indications I had that content of consciousness takes precedence over everything, including physical reality itself. Ain't that a trip? Now think about this for a second. You remember when I was talking to Dutchie earlier about hanging out together in the astral realm and doing all that kind of stuff? So imagine that things get so crazy that when you go to hang out with this other person in this realm. You have to deal with the stuff that's on their mind too. So when you get in their area, the stuff that's in their mind is going to be there. She probably had like a million little Edwards there from watching Twilight, and whatever that guy's name is was in the other room off 50 Shades of Grey and whatever other movie she's been watching. And you just travel there in your OBE state, and they're all in all the rooms. His girlfriend was a harpy. Yeah, at least they weren't astral peeping like that one book we read, right? All right, so one of the most popular interpretations of the out-of-body experiences is that you're roaming the physical world quite literally as if you were a ghost. However, what is assumed to be physical reality in the out-of-body state does not always act like physical reality. Often, objects that should be there are absent or displaced, like windows, furniture, doors, and so on. Or you may encounter events and people that are not really there. Otherwise, inconsistencies include being able to open doors and windows while out of the body. But the latter is obviously not an ability that a ghost is supposed to have anyways. But in the out-of-body books, these inconsistencies are often referred to as reality fluctuations or perceptual distortions. Now, it's said that the out-of-body environment is more fluid than regular physical reality, more easily responding to thoughts and expectations of the projector. This did not seem such a bad explanation, except that these distortions were the norm rather than the exception. Where was reality located in all of this? And I had to find other accounts of the OBE, so I began to read up on the scientific literature. I quickly discovered that the problems I experienced were hardly unique to me. Of particular interest were several parapsychological investigations carried out in the 1970s, and these experiments usually involved asking a talented subject to establish the out-of-body state and then try to perceive an object in another room. Funny, we just talked about this, right? With the object itself unbeknownst to the projector. Not surprisingly, even the most famous and adept projectors weren't able to correctly view the object in the other room, but there were a few exceptions. But overall, results showed that accurate perception in the out-of-body state was not as straightforward as it is often suggested in popular literature. Without prior knowledge of the environment, physical reality was almost impossible to perceive correctly. Now, my skepticism regarding the reality of this out-of-body state grew. I had a few experiences that were difficult to relegate to the realm of coincidence, yet none of these explain the vast number of occurrences in which my experience in the out-of-body state was different from physical reality. It didn't seem to fit this quite literal idea of roaming the physical world as a ghost, or give or take a few perceptual distortions. I became increasingly interested in more scientific and conventional explanations for the OBE, which could be lucid dreaming, and we'll get into that like tomorrow night. But I want you guys to think about this. You know how I always talked about like getting out of body and becoming a ghost is like you can become a ghost. I always say that all the time. Keep this in mind real quick, though. What if becoming a ghost is actually stepping into behind the program so that when you perceive reality, the only way that you're ever going to truly perceive physical reality the way it is right now with these laws, exactly the way it is right now down to the molecule, is in this physical body? Now, when you change data streams or consciousness, you can still perceive all of this, and it'll look, in some cases, more real than what we're looking at right now, if not exactly the same. But there will be some differences. So it really does show you that even the ghost realm is all just a state of consciousness. I know this might not make sense, but it really is. Even this realm is just a certain state of consciousness. So when we go into the etheric realm, or the locale one, whatever Monroe calls it, It's mapped out by everyone's physical existence, their eyes and their brains, but also mapped out by consciousness and its expectations, which, by the way, is why when Robert Monroe traveled to his neighbor's house and he saw so-and-so's wife putting out cards, right, on the table, his mind, his observing consciousness at the time, whatever it was, saw them as playing cards. Now, that wasn't what was actually happening in physical reality. What was actually happening in physical reality was she was handing out the mail to everybody at the table. But because his consciousness went to that scene in a different dimension, so to speak, or in a different state of awareness, it could only take in, I guess it could only take in what his mind could conceive of what's happening. So little details like that, I think his mind, almost like a video game would, just, or AI would, just said, oh, playing cards. But it wasn't playing cards. In the actual physical reality, it was the mail, if that makes sense. So knowing that, even if two people went out of body and went and observed the same things, they might perceive lots of details that are different, but there's still going to be some main things that are going to be the same. Right? So it gets pretty crazy. Now, the bigger question is if you can pinch people in locale one, what does that mean? Like, what does it mean to be a ghost or out of body? Or is everything just a state of consciousness and that's it? And it's all just acting and reacting based on consciousness and that's it. And it's just different levels. I'm kind of starting to think of that, even though I feel like we could travel, even though people have, like Dr. Stylianos Ateshlis, moved physical objects in the out-of-body state. But is he actually moving those physical objects with some sort of body? Or is he just in a different state of vibration or state of consciousness? It gets trippy. It's definitely worth exploring, but where we're leaving off is he started, this guy, let's see, page 24, Fredrick Aardema. So this guy started realizing that when I'm out of body, this state isn't necessarily an exact copy, or it isn't even really, not really the physical realm that I just left, so to speak. And that's where we'll leave off at. Because he's starting to notice these little intricacies that are different, which makes it makes things really interesting. Because like when we see a ghost or a person that's passed away and moved on or whatever, and we see that person, they may not be seeing the same things, even though we see each other. And we might see similar things, but there might be little things that we see different too. I don't know. Yeah. So thank you guys for listening tonight, hanging out with me. If you want to keep hanging out with us, make sure you join the Discord. And if you can't find a link in the description to the Discord, look in, I guess, YouTube's description. Should have a link there. Damn, did I say hi to Grant? I did, didn't I? Hope so. Thanks, Robo1776, brother, for the 15. Thanks, Dutchie, for the 50. And we'll see you guys tomorrow night. We'll pick back up on that book, and maybe I'll play that clip that I was talking about tonight if I can get there. If I can actually prepare for a show for once instead of just clicking a button and going, all right, I'm live. Y'all ready to do this? It's kind of how we do things around here, though. Love you guys. Night, night. See you in the Discord. Sweet dreams.